Welcome, everyone, to the Get Your Goddess Groove on Radio. I am your host, Laura Maven Starr. And when the goddess speaks, everyone listens. So, welcome, goddess. Do you feel like life is a mystery to be solved, that you must stand alone in this life? Listen deeply, beloved soul, and hear my call. I am your waiting inner goddess speaking to you. I'm here to call you home and activate your deepest prayer inside of you. So I am your host, Laura Maven Starr, as an emissary for the goddess. I love to offer you authentic channel messages of love, inspiration, heart healing grace to guide you forward in transcending your own consciousness and becoming the change that you wish to see in the world. So I invite you now and welcome you to our Get Your Goddess Groove on show. And there is much love and light here for you today. And we'll try to get grounded here again. And I'll just invite you to grab a cup of tea or water and get comfortable for the next 45 minutes to an hour as we dive into another beautiful healing goddess conversation and topic today. And I would love to welcome a new guest in our community. Her name is Jessica Falcon. And over the last couple months, Jessica and I have got to know each other. Um, and we share really, I think, so much in our work and even in our soul group. And I call both of us womb priestesses because that's kind of the focus of what we're doing to help other priestesses, other goddesses, other healers and intuitives to awaken their own consciousness and evolve, step into their highest destiny in Dharma and soul mission purpose work, which we're all being called to now by Divine Mother, right? We can all, I think, see that today. So let me tell you a little bit about Jessica before we get started. Jessica Falcon is an international soul embodiment guide and speaker. She co hosts the Radically Embody Love Podcast. She teaches online workshops and coaches private clients from around the world. She guides women to reclaim their power and sovereignty so they experience the ecstasy of true soul freedom. I just love that because freedom is one of my high value words, Jessica, and I know we both embody that so beautifully. So, Jessica is an expert on guiding you into the depths of your body so that you can embody your power, speak your truth, and own your majesty. A former lawyer turned mystic, she is the forthcoming author of The Power of Eve, Heal the Wounds of the Feminine and Reclaim Your Sovereignty. So, welcome, Jessica. I am so excited to have you today on our show. And I know today we're going to talk about what it means to embody your soul or reclaim your body as holy, which I totally, totally love this topic. I can't wait to dive in and super excited to have this beautiful healing conversation. So, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and have our one of our normal goddess conversations like we love to do. And this time we're just doing it publicly. So I'm grateful for all of those listening and the opportunity to share and hear from others. And I love that opening that you read, that invocation from the goddess. It's so beautiful because she does live inside of each of us. And that's exactly what we've been told not to believe, right? We've been told to believe the divine is outside of us. We've been told it's separate from us. We've been told we're not even worthy of being or experiencing the divine. And yet the goddess reminds us that we are that, and she is life. She is the holiness of our body. She is beauty. She is pleasure. She is existence itself. She's the earth. And so she really can't be separate from us. It's impossible because we are of the earth and we forget and we turn away. And so really embodying a soul and coming back to the goddess is remembering the self. It's coming back home to the self. That is the remembrance.
So I just love what you're saying so much that, you know, coming back home to our soul and yeah, I mean, yeah, let's dive into that, exactly like really dive deep into what does that mean? And from your perspective, what in your own maybe experience, how did you begin even the journey of maybe for yourself and sharing a little bit about your background and your story of, that's a pretty radical in today's modern society to go from a profession of lawyer. When I think of lawyer, I think of people who are highly intelligent, but they're very much, centered perhaps in their mind and their mental body. And it doesn't mean that they're excluding any of their other bodies, but maybe share a few words about how did that happen for you? What happened?
Yeah, I love that question because I've actually been talking to a lot of clients lately who are going through a lot of challenging times. And when I see and hear people going through really difficult times, they're struggling, they're having the seeming opposition happen in their life. Things are falling away that they've held on to. The old identity no longer serves them. The roles they were playing no longer fit them. Well, that's exactly what happened to me. And that's the sign of a soul awakening. That's your soul knocking on the door saying, I'm here. Look at me. Because it happens for us. When we have these challenges, we have these things that are happening in our life. It happens for us. It happens to get us to stop looking out here and identifying with everything external as who and what we are, to turn our eyes inward to start discovering who am I underneath all of that? What and who is my true self? How do I access that? How do I live from the inside out, which is sovereignty? How do I connect with my deep soul and truth and live from that place, not based on the external? And for me, before I had my own very intense series of awakening, which I'll touch on, I didn't even know that I wasn't living fully. Like I didn't even know. I mean, from all accounts, I was very successful. Had everything you're supposed to want according to the world, and I had, good relationships, and I was healthy, and I had all the quote things. But then, literally, I was 25, I believe, it was 2008. When this happened. I'm 41 now. So however many years ago that was, I think I was 25, 26. And I went to bed one night. It was in the middle of a 2-week jury trial. It was a really intense jury trial. I was a criminal prosecutor in my former life. And I wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of beeping noise. And I'm kind of like, oh, whatever. I'll just ignore that. I don't know what that is. I'm too groggy to get up. Finally wake up at 5 a.m. because I was going to go to the gym and go to work and, do my normal routine. And I looked out the window and I couldn't see the ground. It was just water where there would normally be grass. And turns out the creek behind my house flooded overnight, 13 inches of rain, tropical storm in less than 5 hours. And I literally had to be rescued by firefighters. And I lost pretty much everything overnight, just like that. My car was totaled in the floodwaters. I had a 2-story condo I had just purchased 7 months prior, and the entire bottom floor had to be re-gutted completely. So I was out of a house, even though I still didn't pay the mortgage, for 6 months. And I literally was standing there watching the destruction before my eyes. There was nothing I could do to stop it. Like when we're going through something really difficult or something really challenging happens, we can't stop it, right? We just have to go, oh, here I am. This is my new reality. Like it or not, I'm watching my prior life be destroyed in front of me. And I can't do anything but what happened is I started to question the path I was on. I started to wonder, what is the deeper meaning? Why am I on this so-called path to success? Whose success is this? Is this mine? do I want this? Who am I? What do I want? What is the meaning of the world? Why am I here? And I had these just inundated with question after question after question. And then not long after, less than a year later, I was in a bicycle accident that could have very easily killed me. And I just had these series of events that just kept making me loosen my grip, I'll call it, on the external world, and forced me to look at my internal world, because the external world no longer made any sense. And I think that's why these things happen. I think when these even the worldly global challenges we're experiencing, they don't happen to punish us. They don't happen because we've done something wrong. They don't happen because, their karma and all of the things you hear. They happen because they're opportunities to let go of what we think this world is, and attachments to physicality and 3D, and start to harness the power of our soul, harness the power of our deep truth that we are way more than meets the eye. And there's way more to the world than meets the eye. And so that's how I began to transition out of that. And eventually, a couple of years later, because I resisted this for a long time, transitioning out of law, I had a vision of the goddess Isis. New Year's Eve 2012, that was an embodied vision. I was completely in my body, completely aware I was in space, and entered another dimension. Wasn't even doing ceremony, had never experienced anything like that before in my life. And she came to me so viscerally, so visually, before I really even knew who she was. And she called me on an initiation. And it took me a long time to even really understand what that meant, because in some ways I'm just now coming out of it. 11 years later, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I eventually surrendered to the calling of my soul, which was to leave the legal profession and go on a spiritual pilgrimage.
Wow, wow. And I love what you're sharing. And those wake up calls, which, some might call the dark night of the soul, where, everything in our life shifts so much in our outer world that, we can't go. It's almost like you don't have a choice, but we obviously made the choice. I think we planned the choice as part of our life blueprint and map before we came into the incarnation, and that we would have these wake up calls and these moments where our whole outer perspective becomes shattered. And then we have to go in, right? We have to focus and we have to slow down. We have to pause and we have to go in to say, okay, what is really happening here? What is life trying to show me? What is life trying to teach me? What is trying to awaken within me? And I think a lot of times it does take these almost kind of shattering events. Some people have near-death experiences and they go through that. But like you're saying, there was this flood that came and just literally overnight, you lost everything. Your car, your home, your whole life was like being completely washed away, and like almost like a clean slate was trying to maybe present itself with a new choice point on, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue on this path, like you were saying? Or are you going to explore? Maybe there is another possibility. Maybe life is trying to show me something else. And we all have these moments. I know mine came very much, I felt like a lightning strike, came into my life, and I lost my job and I lost um my whole life basically within 18 months. So I totally can understand it. It happens differently for each of us. And what can we um what can we do? Like, I mean, I totally feel it's pre-planned. It's not just a coincidence, but a synchronicity between us and our soul, that we pre-planned into this lifetime. And, you know, so that happened. That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you woke up. I love the story about Isis coming in and making herself, like, would you say almost like real to you? Like you were saying, you realized you were in this body, you were in this 3D want to call it that, reality, very physical, but yet you walked into another dimension, you walked into another parallel reality, and there she was. That's really cool. Um, and was it something like that came to you in a dream, or was it like more like just the we are right now, and she just appeared before you in your own mind's eye and conscious?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a friend over. It was New Year's Eve, and we just decided to make it a really quiet year. We didn't really feel like drinking. We didn't feel like going out. We just like, let's just get together and maybe do a little ritual or so. And we honestly hadn't even gotten to that point. We just ate dinner. And after dinner, I felt this like extreme pain in my stomach. And I sat down and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain. I just have to take a seat, put my hand on my stomach, and I felt Egypt flash through my mind. And I'm like, well, that's weird. We weren't even talking about Egypt. Why in the world would I think that? And this is before, I mean, I had been doing body work at that point. I had been getting into my body, getting into my feelings, a lot of catharsis, a lot of healing, but I didn't have the consciousness around it I do now. And nor had I ever had these types of experiences. And so my friend came over who was a somatic healer, and she said, can I put my hand on your stomach? And I said, sure. So she did. And she goes, I feel Egypt. And I said, well, that's weird. I felt that too. And I hadn't even told her what I'd experienced.
Yeah.
And so then literally like a minute later, I'm like, I'm sorry, please get out of my way. I have to get on the floor. And I fell off the chair onto my hands and knees, and boom, vision started like that, just like that. No substance, no drumming, no intention, no ceremony, no nothing. But I do think the fact that she was there made me feel safer allowing it to happen, because I knew I wasn't alone. I had experienced other energies my whole life, but I'd always been scared of them. And so I think somehow knowing that she was there and able to kind of witness me. So as soon as the vision started, I said to her, I feel safe. Something about this feels safe. And she said, okay, well, just tell me if it doesn't, and I'm here. And because my body said I'm safe, right? Not the mind. The mind had no idea what was going on, but the body knows. And there was actually a lioness in front of me, and it started encircling me as it held my gaze and encircled me 3 times. And I knew it was judging me. And I knew my answer was yes, even though I had no idea what I was saying yes to. I knew my answer was yes. And so I held its gaze, and in my body, soul, I said yes. And after it encircled me 3 times, the lioness disappeared, and Isa stood in its place directly in front of me with the most beautiful emanation of light. I still can picture her right in front of me. And then immediately her heart fell out of her body onto the floor, and rivers of blood gushed out of her like torrents of blood gushing out. And I was horrified. And I stepped back in my vision, like just stepped back. And then I leaned down with my left hand, which is significant, and I picked up her heart. I put it back in her body, and we stepped together and merged into one light. Boom, out of the vision.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So it's interesting what you're saying, that your stomach was hurting. However, do you think that was just for you to bring the attention to your womb? And when you brought your hands, did you physically bring your hands to your body where the pain was? And do you think a memory or the activation, you were giving yourself an awakening and activation with that?
I now believe that the reason the pain came is because this is where the soul light enters the body in the core.
Mhm.
And I felt the pain where my soul light enters my body, because it was a soulful experience. And to this day, I can experience past life memories through my core when I tune in. And that's where I connect most deeply to my soul light and guide my clients to connect most deeply, is actually Well, it's not just the core. That's one of the areas, because the entire energetic system is important from the feet up to the crown. And so I feel like it was something happening with my soul that created that intensity, because we call it pain, but really it's an intense sensation, that intensity that then did draw my attention there, that allowed me to sit, allowed me to kind of tune in, and then it just happened because I was in that receptive state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. And I want everyone to know that this is a mystical experience, is what I would call it. Would you call it a mystical experience, Jessica, too? Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely one that I know that my soul prior to this incarnation knew what was going to happen. And I think that's why soul wisdom is so important, because the mind can never understand this. Like, if you're trying to understand this with your mind, it will never happen. I still don't. I was there. I witnessed it. I experienced it. I felt it. I know it's real with every single cell of my body. And my mind can't understand it. My mind cannot grasp it. And that's how we start to live according to our divinity, is when we stop trying to intellectualize and make sense of and logicalize, and surrender to soul, surrender to truth, surrender to the feeling state, to the what is, to the magic, which is beyond comprehension, because the soul exists beyond time and space. The soul isn't limited to form. It knows what our mind can never know.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I had myself several mystical experiences that they weren't pre-planned. I did set an intention. They just come up, they just come up out of the body and meet you. And some of those were in sacred sites, like in the south of France. I actually had one at Telos, meeting the people of Telos at Mount Shasta, which I never planned. I never even knew. I just went out to meditate in Panther's Meadow. And I had these three wise elders who came to me, in my mind's eye, to perform ceremony to greet me as a daughter of the cosmos, and to greet me. And they were from Telos, that lives there at Mount Shasta. And I would call that a mystical experience. It also, to me, I love I love to give people opportunities to have more of these experiences, because like you beautifully said, it's beyond our mental mind. The mind did not orchestrate it, because it wasn't pre-planned. It wasn't, like you said, an intention necessarily. And it just sort of shows up through a synchronicity. And I have found that, just as you said, the more that we set an intention to follow our soul's path, to connect with our soul's divinity, and to make this our priority, or to make this our choice, we're opening the doors, we're opening the inner gateway for our soul. Now we've given space for our soul to come and to say, okay, she's saying, yeah, she's given like permission, right? To um, to meet her, to come and to give her a mystical experience of her own soul's wisdom, right? Or gnosis. So, how did this lead you then, Jessica, to you were talking about at that time on your own journey, you started to do some embodiment practices, right? And I can imagine, but share with us, how did you make that journey from this job of being a lawyer and very much focused in the mental, to becoming embodied, embodying your soul in the physical body? Like, how did you bridge that? Was that something that you did very specific activities, or can you share more with us about that?
To start coming out of the mind into the body is a journey. Even the temple of Philae, dedicated to Isis in Egypt, it really takes you through from the feet up to the holiest of holies in the heart, and it signifies that it's a journey. And I think that Isis is connected to coming into the body, because Isis represents the earth. She's the cosmic mother. She represents life itself, the sacredness of life itself. And so we can't be here on earth and in a body and connect to our divinity if we're not using the wisdom of the body to do so. If we're in the mind, we are limited to what we can understand. We're limited to the beliefs of others, to the perceptions of others, to conditioning. The mind only knows what it sees and can understand. The body is a communication device for the soul. The body is a portal to the divine, as I like to call it. And so when we start to go into the body, and I'll talk about my journey in a second, but when we start to go into the body, we start to connect to that infinite wisdom that lives within us. At the beginning, however, it's difficult to just connect to the wisdom, which is why I think it's helpful to have guidance, because our subconscious mind is also stored in our body, which includes energetic imprints of trauma from this life and other. So when we start to go into the body, we have to learn how to sift through that by aligning to the soul truth. And that's the way that we do that, which is a whole process we can talk more about in terms of soul embodiment. But the way I started getting into it is when I initially left to go on a spiritual pilgrimage to Europe. I ended up, after traveling alone and going to different sites and having deeper connection to myself, I ended up in a karmic relationship that was an opportunity for me to free myself from lifetimes past of oppressing and suppressing my power, because it wasn't safe to be in my power. It wasn't safe to be in my body. It wasn't safe to be in my truth. It wasn't safe to be me, as I think almost every woman on this planet can relate to, because it has not been safe for women to be in our power, particularly our sacred power, our womb power, our body power. It was safe for me to be in my intellectual power, if you want to call that power. That was safe. It was not safe for me to be in my feminine power, which is to feel and to speak that deep truth from the inside out. And as a result, I felt myself in a pretty tortuous situation. And my higher self, my soul, my guides started to guide me into my body. I had taken a yoga teacher training, part of it, before I went to Europe. And so I knew a little bit about how to go into the body, and I'd practiced yoga and done a lot of weightlifting and been very athletic, but I didn't know how to communicate with my body, to have a relationship really with my body, or to see it as a portal. And because of this guidance that I just intuitively felt, I would start just putting my hands on my body, on different parts of my body, my heart, my womb in particular at that time, and breathing into the body, directing my awareness with my mind eye down into the center of the body underneath my hands, use my breath to create space, connect deeply, and intend to hear what was there. So this is something you could all do, is just place your hands. And I know that, Laura, you guide people beautifully into their womb in more specific ways, but you could just place your hands on any part of your body, direct that attention there, and intend to connect to the energy of the body, not the physicality so much, because when we go into to communicate with the soul, it's the energy of the soul that we're accessing through the body. And so just feel and create that space with the breath, with the attention, with the intention. And then the role is to be in a receptive state. This is not thinking, this is not forcing, this is not efforting, this is creating the receptivity necessary and opening the energy channels, which I'd like to talk more about, to allow the information to come into conscious awareness. That could happen in the moment, it could happen later in the day, it could happen weeks later. Because if we're not already connected to the energy of the body, there's probably a lot of energetic stagnancy, other people's energies in there that can prohibit us from receiving the soul wisdom. And so what we have to do is start clearing the channel, start creating that space by just being with the energy. We allow it to move. That's the power of consciousness. So when we direct the energy and consciousness into the body, the energy stored within begins to move, it begins to vibrate, it begins to come to the surface. Sometimes we know what it is, sometimes we don't. And as that happens, we have to be sure not to stuff it back down. Like, oh, that feeling of anger, I don't understand why it's here. I don't like that. I'm going to stuff it back down. It's like hitting your head on a wall. You've just created the energy and now you're putting it back. Or, I don't know why this anger is here. I don't really know, but I'm going to acknowledge its presence. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to let it be here and I'm going to let it move. And then boom, stagnancy's gone. Energy's cleared. There's more space within that part of the body to allow for more clear communication. It's like when you're on a phone and there's a ton of static, you can't quite hear what the other person's saying. It's the same when our energy isn't clear. We have to clear the channel to create for easier communication. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, and is similar to my own experience where really back it was 2005, I started to study yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong, but for the same thing, my guides are trying to get me, out of the mental realm and more into the body. And that was the pathway that I had to begin to open. And I remember I tried to meditate for about a year and I was using these tapes from the Edgar Casey ARE and they were wonderful, but I had such a strong mental, that I still wasn't quite doing it. And so I found this yoga place I started going to, and they taught me a really cool practice where if you just take your hands in front of your heart and you slowly pull them apart, that this actually helps to, number one, open your heart space. And it also gives the mind something to do. It gives the mind somewhere to focus. And, there are different ways to meditate. But for me, this became a very powerful practice. And I soon was able to begin to start to calm down the mind, the mental, monkey mind, and be able to really bring my focus into feeling energy, the feeling of energy, the tingling in the hands, the warmth in the hands, but, feeling energy literally in between as I was playing with the energetic field. So I love what you're saying because, there are many different ways we can awaken, but we begin to fine tune into, and I think I love what you said about it. It's a redirection of where we focus and where we're giving our attention. And we have to almost, I call it retrain ourselves because we've been so conditioned to focus here. We have to find ways. And I do think that grounding, grounding exercises, even dance or yoga, walking in nature, sitting in the earth, hugging a tree, all these different ways we can begin to tune into and retrain the energy flow to begin to move it down from the head down, to the upper chakras, opening the heart, and then to eventually move it down all seven chakras and then including into the womb. And that same sort of journey as the Marys, I call them Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, began to teach me back in 2016 of this whole, what I call, I don't know, I call it, it's like becoming a full body oracle again or something. It's like we're actually beginning to bring life, our I am, our soul divinity, we're bringing the life force back into the body, you know, and enlivening the body, opening up all the energy pathways, right, that have been shut down, that have been suppressed. Like you were saying so beautifully, that it doesn't have to be complicated. And I know for me, I've tried several different methods, and any of the methods that were more mentally based, I couldn't do it, Jessica. It would drive me nuts. It would make it worse for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that that these practices though that we teach, with opening the heart, opening the womb, the vertical flow, of our sound, our light, our vibration, our soul song, that it doesn't have to be complicated at all. And yet these are very powerful practices to open our body again to become so that we can operate not just from the mental, but we can operate at every level of our body. We can operate from the heart. We can operate from the womb wisdom. We can begin to embody our sovereignty, our whole body wisdom, because our body, like you said, I love what you said about the body is a gift from the divine. And I've never understood these sort of other spiritual pathways. And I'm not judging them or making them wrong, but I never understood how they couldn't see that the body is a gift being in this physical incarnation. It's an intersection for enlightenment, for making what's unconscious become conscious and being able to fully embody our bodies again as holy vessels. What are your thoughts on that? What has been your experience around that? I would love to know.
Yeah, well, I want to first just comment on what you just stated around it's not a coincidence that we have been told that the body is not divine, because that happened at the exact same time the goddess was no longer recognized. At the exact same time, only a male god out in the sky could be worshipped. At the exact same time, women were no longer considered holy. Because there was a new belief system at that time. We're talking over 5,000 years ago. There was a very new belief system instilled, which said that life itself is a form of punishment. It is not holy, and therefore matter is not holy. The body is not holy. And we have to come up and out of life, come up and out of the body, come up and out of self to reach the holy, to reach spirit, to reach the divine. That belief system, which took at least 2,500 years to force on humanity through extreme warfare and violence. This is a huge part of my book and teachings is rewiring our system and releasing these very deeply embedded subconscious beliefs, specifically around this belief system that has kept us from embodying our soul, that has kept us from embodying our divinity, because they're very deeply embedded and they can stop us from hearing the wisdom and living according to our own soul's truth. When we think that we have to go up and out to access the divine. And that's why I think that soul embodiment, embodying your divinity, is the path of ascension. Because what that says is I come back to union. I recognize the divine within me. I recognize the divine within my body. I recognize the divine within this telephone. I recognize the divine within every tree and plant and flower. I recognize the divine in all of life. I recognize the divine in every person and every animal. I recognize everything as divine, and I no longer choose to live in separation, because what that belief system created was separation. So we now are being asked, as we remember the goddess, it's really remembering life as sacred. That's what the goddess has always represented. It's remembering life as sacred, and it's remembering ourselves as sacred. And that is the reclamation of the divine feminine. But it's also coming into union with the divine, which is ascension. We don't go out of the body to ascend. We go deeper and deeper into our own divinity. But here's the trick. If we're just going into the body, but we're not allowing the emotions, the energy, the soul knowing, that wisdom to become an intimate part of our daily life, the way we communicate, how we have relationships, we're not embodying our soul. So it's about creating and opening the channel of communication with the body, with the soul. And then the real embodiment comes when we take action on that. When we live that, when we breathe that, we become that. There's no more, oh yeah, that's a great idea. No, it's how can I look at this fear and transmute it by living not according to the mind, not according to the 3D world, not according to the limitations I've been programmed to have. How can I take this fear, bring it into the body, into the heart, into the soul, into the light of our divinity? How can I take that in and sit with it and be with it and face it and transmute it? That's how we really start to embody the soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Love what you're saying. I mean, that's exactly been my pathway. That's what I began to understand. That's what I began when I first started my healing journey, that you couldn't just heal just on the mental level. In other words, if you're working with beliefs, and we all have them, we all have limiting beliefs, we have false beliefs, we have family system beliefs, we have religious beliefs, we have all this, mind control or programs going on. And I began to understand that in order to really delete them, if you want to say that, or release them, is I had to go into the body. I had to go into my body, and I had to release them from the inside out on every level. They had to come out of the mental, the emotional body, the physical body, if they were lodged there, and the spiritual body or the energy body, in order to totally uproot and release those for good permanently. And because I saw where, especially in my mother and the relationship with my mother, who was modeling um, these beliefs and these patterns, I began to understand, the relationship between the mental and the womb. And I began to understand that the womb was recreating all of these beliefs over and over and over again, the unconscious beliefs, right? Over and over, as well as even the conscious beliefs that we have. And that the power of, as I made this journey, um, into the body deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm so super grateful to the Marys for leading me, because honestly, I don't know where I would be today, Jessica, without, their guidance, their love back into, owning my feminine energy and anchoring that feminine energy, which they said was so super important to come back into balance, right? To bring everything into balance, to bring everything into the right sort of correct perspective, that we are in this 3D world, but we're not of it, that Yeshua used to share. And that meaning that we can embody our soul, we can be our own guidance, through our soul's guidance and that connection while in this beautiful body, with our body, in partnership with our body, in partnership with, every inch of us, with every part of us on every level. And that by doing that, we're coming back into our sovereignty. We get to make that choice now. Whereas, really, our mothers maybe didn't even have that choice so much, or our grandmothers, I mean, when I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm really grateful for, because I can look back at my mother and my grandmother, and their lives weren't so easy. I'm not saying that we have it easy, or maybe we don't have, but I do feel that things are getting easier for us as women, in the sense that we're beginning to awaken, we're beginning to own our power back. And I'm finding the more conscious that we become, and that's where, to me, the true power is, Jessica, is it's about diving deep into the unconsciousness of the womb and the body. And that's where we're going to find our light. That's where we're going to find our sovereignty. And that's where we find and create more consciousness, right? And that's where I'm feeling the most empowerment myself on this journey, is that even though the last 3 years have been challenging for all of us and difficult, even, whatever word you want to use, if I look back, even though I don't like everything that's happened, of course not, but I can't deny the spiritual growth. I cannot deny that, with everything being in our face, so to speak, in a sense, there's no more denial. You can't run anywhere. You can't go anywhere if you're in a body. You have got to begin to face what you've denied, you repressed, you pushed away, of yourself, right? And so, you know, how can this serve us? How can we further move toward embodiment and in this beautiful way of recognizing our bodies are holy, they hold wisdom, and that they're actually just trying to partner with us. And what do you feel about that, or what are your thoughts on that?
The first thing coming to me in response to what you're sharing is that we have to make it safe to be in our body, because the reality, unfortunate as it is that it still isn't safe for a lot of people to be in their body. Or we've experienced trauma where it wasn't safe, or we've experienced lifetimes of trauma where it wasn't safe to be in a body, to be in our power, to be who we are. Again, particularly as women, because for thousands of years, women have been killed who connected to the goddess, who connected to the womb, who connected to magic, connected to love, even. And so how do we create this internal safety? That's probably my specialty, like that I'm the most passionate about, is that creating internal safety so that we can access the wisdom of the body. Because if we don't rely on source, the power of the soul to create that safety, we're not going to be able to create the level of embodiment we want. I'm shortening this. There's a lot more I could say about this, but one of the ways that we source safety from the soul is by recognizing that we are both. We are of this world because we are made of the earth. We do drink the water. We do eat the food. We do breathe the air. We need the sun. We are of this world. We are of the earth. We can't be separate. As long as we are in a body, we can't be separate. And we are more than this. Our soul is eternal. So we are of this world and not limited by it. And when we can work with both, I feel like that's where the magic happens. When we can work with the body as a temple and a vessel, but also honor its physicality, then we move, because the body, even though it's physical, all matter is energy. And that's why when you were talking about the mind being connected to the womb and having to clear the beliefs, even if they're in the mind, you also have to clear them out of the body, because a belief is energy. Whether it's subconscious or conscious, it's still energy. Everything is energy. Well, energy can never be destroyed. It can only be transformed. And so if we see the body as energy, physical, yes, but what's underneath the physical? Energy. So if we can see the body as energy, and we can also connect to the energy of our soul, we can begin to source that safety through the power of our recognition of who we are beyond form, which allows us to know our impermanence. I'm trying not to make this too inaccessible, but I wanted to make sense. So tell me if it doesn't. But when we start to access that impermanent nature of who and what we are, our divinity, our soul, and then know we can never be killed. Our soul is impermanent, and use that wisdom and live by that wisdom in our physicality. That's when the soul light feels safe enough to come down and in and through the body to bring more light into the body. So we inhabit the body, come into that inner union, but the safety is knowing that nothing can take that away from us. Nothing can take our power away. Nothing can take our worth away. Nothing can take our value away. Absolutely nothing. No matter the darkest of the dark can try to dim our light, and our light will still be there. Nothing can extinguish it unless we allow it, right? And so the safety is really starting to recognize that power that we have, and then acting based on that, speaking based on that, choosing our path based on that, not choosing our path based on what makes sense to the 3D world, makes sense to other people, but what truly honors the soul. Because when we live a life of soul, we honor the soul first and foremost, and we trust the soul to guide us when we have that deep connection. We trust the soul to provide, to show us the way, to bring the resources that we need to make this thing happen, or whatever it is. That's when we are truly in that magical in-between realm. And it requires releasing our grip, as we started with, on, well, what are other people going to think? And does this make sense? And can I really do this? Yes, you can. I'm not saying it'll always be easy, but the soul is eternal. So if we live according to the eternal truth, not the temporary one, we find that deep freedom. It is so possible to experience in the here and now, because it's internal. It doesn't depend on external circumstance.
So beautifully said. Thank you. That was really, I love what you're saying, and I totally agree, because it's, for most, a lot of us, like you said, unfortunately, sadly, most people don't feel safe enough to come into the body to truly ground all of their soul light or their soul essence into this body, right? Which is really, we're depriving ourselves of the fullness of life, and we know that the way that we know we're not fully inhabiting our body is when we don't feel safe, we don't feel grounded, we feel a lot of fears driving us. We may feel numb, we may feel we're just flowing with, barely flowing through life, right? We're not fully living out. We're not fully experiencing joy. We're not fully experiencing the pleasure of the body that it can bring. And we don't feel alive, we feel shut down. And, that's part of why I love doing the work that I do with my community, because, you know, it's our birthright. It's our birthright that God gave us. God has gave us these beautiful bodies, to come into these beautiful bodies to, and as you said, we're connected to the earth, connected to nature, to the animals, to the plants, to the trees. And when we can really allow ourselves to allow our light to come anchored in particular the feminine, right? Because the feminine is our intuition. The feminine is the energy of love. And I call it riding the wave. If I can just ride, love is 1% over fear. If I'm 51% more love and light and I'm 49% fear, I don't even have to be 100%. My life is flowing. My life is flowing and I'm in balance. I'm in balance. I'm able to maneuver through life with more ease, more grace, more joy, less worry, less fear, right? And it's all possible for every person on this planet. It's all possible for each and every one of us, that we can live this life of really being guided, by our I am presence, our soul life, along with in partnership with the body, in union with the body, in union with the beauty around us, right? With the trees and the plants and the flowers, and truly in the earth, right? That's the goddess energy that is so just rich and full of life, is it not?
Yeah. And the thing is, the reality is that we can't, if we're not in our body, we can't be sovereign, and we can't be living according to our soul's truth, because it lives in the body, because our choice lives in the body. So here's the thing about, and I know this from personal experience, and I see it, is that when we're not in the body, we're living according to subconscious beliefs passed down from this and other lifetimes. We're choosing based on the mind, which is other people's beliefs and conditioning in society. We're not connected to our own soul's voice. Therefore, we're not connected to our own soul's truth. Therefore, we can't live according to our own soul's truth. So in order to actually embody our divinity, to actually be sovereign, to choose for ourselves, to live what our soul wants us to experience here, we have to be in the body to hear it. We have to be in the body to access it. We have to be in the body to distinguish, develop that discernment. Is this mine? Is this somebody else's? Because sovereignty starts when you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of others and you see yourself through your own eyes. When you connect to this inner world, which is in and through the body, not because it's purely physical, but because it's all of the energy that is directing your choices and behavior and words unconsciously until you access it and become your own authority, because you have decided, instead of living according to the external. That's where choice comes from. It comes from within. When you hear something and repeat it, that's somebody else's truth. Your truth lives inside.
Yeah. And, here's kind of a harsh truth that I discovered for myself is that if you don't take command of your energy, if you don't take command of your body, then someone else will. Someone else will take over your mind, or they'll take over your emotions, they'll take over your body, they'll start to take your energy away from you. You'll become depleted, you'll become miserable. And so really, that is kind of a harsh truth. And this reality is that we have to begin to want to be able to command our energy. We're meant to become we are master creators. We're already that. And that's part of the Christ consciousness. The Christ consciousness is not just a concept of religion to me. It's way beyond that. It's really coming back into the body to discover that we are at the helm of our ship. And are we going to step in and become the captain of our ship, or the co-captain with Source, and begin to create our life in conscious, loving ways? Or are we going to continue to cower down, deny, back away, and let other energy forces come into our body and literally drive us, become enmeshed and entangled with us, which is what has happened to humanity at the fall over 5,000 years ago, or began to happen. We began to lose our sovereignty and our power. We began to even give it away because of the fear. So,
and that's exactly why we were separated from our bodies, is because it was the way to control us. Because you cannot be controlled when you go into your body and connect with that soul and connect with that truth. You cannot be controlled. And so it's not a coincidence. It's also not a coincidence that so many women have been and continue to be raped and abused and assaulted sexually, because it is a form of darkness trying to go in and prohibit access to that power that lies within a woman, that lies within her womb, that lies within her body. And I think that's why, and I've experienced that, unfortunately, a lot in my life. And I really feel like my deepest healing around sexual healing was going into and using my soul light and my knowledge of my divinity, my love, to literally shine the light through all that darkness that they tried to put in me, because they believed they could control me or keep me separate from my own sexuality, my own power. And when we go into the womb, that's a really big part of it, as you know, that it's clearing those imprints of trauma, clearing the energy of being taken and used against our will. And we have to reclaim that space as our own. We reclaim our body, as you were saying, we reclaim our body as our own, and no longer allow the other energies to have space here. And that's where the boundaries come in. That's where the true self-expression comes in. That's where the self-ownership comes in. We say no more will this energy of this event from this past life or incident or trauma, no longer will it have power over me, because I claim my authority. I claim my power. I claim my light. I return to love. I don't accept this inside of me anymore. And we heal that with so much love and so much compassion, so that we reclaim that sovereignty over our sexual energy. It's so imperative for us to do this work, to come back into union with our divinity, which, why else are we here? Why? We're here to reunite with our soul and divinity. To me, there's no other reason to be here.
Absolutely. Well said. Love what you said. So much truth in that, Jessica, and so well said that, yeah, and this is how we're going to heal the world. And even the Dalai Lama has said that women are leading the way. How are we leading the way? We're leading the way by taking back the sovereignty of our bodies and our wombs, because our wombs are the creative portal from the formless into matter. That's where the exchange happens, just like birthing a baby. That's very mysterious and we don't understand everything, but we know it's true. That the womb is where we can create miracles, we can create love, we can create and shine light, or we can continue to walk around with our wombs being shrouded in pain. And my first clairvoyant coach used to say the feminine has been shrouded in pain. And I didn't understand what that meant for a long time. It took on a whole new meaning when I started to heal my own womb, and the Marys began to show me, but the source, or the container for your feminine power is held in the womb. That is where it becomes anchored, and the heart and the pineal, but the womb. And we have to have the courage as women. We have to begin to open up to a new level of consciousness and begin to say, yes, I'm going to inhabit my womb space. I'm going to shine my priestess light. I'm going to take back my freedom, and I'm going to take back my body, literally, is a sovereign being of holiness and sacredness. And we have to begin to do that in order for the new earth to be birthed. And that's what I've been shown. For the new earth to be birthed, it will be birthed through women's wombs. Yes, it'll be birthed through men as well. They can also create, but as women, we hold more energy to create because our bodies are made in the image of mother. And so I think that, to me, this is the greatest call. The greatest call of our time is for women to awaken, to really begin to open their eyes, to begin to really hear, to begin to really speak again as sovereign free beings, because we are the eyes and ears, the hands and the mouths for Divine Mother. We are her emissaries. We are made in her image. And this was something that, this passion, if you want to call it that, this mission, if you want to call it that. I don't even have a word for it, Jessica. I know you feel the same way I do, that after going to France, my entire life being changed in 2 weeks, that imprint of the feminine that became alive within me. I will be doing this until I'm no longer in a physical body. I mean, it's like, and I love it so much that, it's not about money. It's not about any of those things. It's about every woman that can reclaim her body sovereignty, her womb, her wisdom, her intuition is a victory. You know what I mean? It's a coming home. It's our birthright. It's coming home to real union with your sacred sexuality, which is the power of love, is it not? Yeah,
Well, love is what creates union.
that's right.
Absolutely. Love, the
Absolutely.
heart is the point of union,
Yes.
and in ancient times the heart and womb were one. So reuniting heart and womb, coming back into love, is the way we come into union with ourselves, because if we're not in union with ourselves, we're not in union with the all. And I think that's what I would like to end this conversation with, like,
Yes.
because I know we're wrapping up, is that we are part of the conditioning we talked about earlier, is that, the divine is outside of us and we have to go ascend, and we have been, there's so much in the spiritual world that says, oh no, oneness. Well, it starts within. You're never going to truly know oneness and union if you don't know oneness and union with yourself. And that's what all the ancient mysteries point to, including Isis, is that we come into union and oneness with all of who we are, every single part of who we are. We come into oneness through the power of love. And when we do that, we begin to know oneness with the all.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you so much for that, Jessica. And I think that's a great place to pause here. And it's been a great conversation. It's been very healing. And I'm just going to take a moment to see if we do have any questions from anyone for Jessica. You can type into the chat box, or if you have a question, you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask Jessica a question. We have time for that. And while you're formulating a question in the chat box, I just want to let everyone know that we do have the links in here are posted in here to learn more about Jessica and her work at www.thepathttosovereignty.com. You can also find her on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. And she also has a beautiful Radically Embody Love podcast. I love that, on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And you can also find her there. And also, Jessica has a beautiful free gift for everyone today. She has a free heart womb meditation to anchor into the self. So I love that, Jessica. It's very similar to one I also have for my community. And I would encourage everyone here on the call or the replay to click on this link here in the chat box, and you can download Jessica's beautiful meditation to help you to begin to start your journey or continue your journey onto furthering into your sovereignty and your full soul embodiment with your body. So Jessica, are there any parting words of wisdom that you want to leave us with here that you'd like to share with us before we end our and close our call today?
Yeah, thank you so much. First, I just want to say thank you for this beautiful conversation, and for those of you listening and are here live. And I think the most important thing to remember is that as we're coming into embodiment, as we're coming into union, as we're coming into sovereignty, the key is love. The key is the heart. Love is the key in the way, as Mary Magdalene taught. And so the more that you can access that and go into your womb, go into various parts of yourself, go into and observe your thoughts with that love, hold them in love, witness them in love, and also use the power of love to dissolve what is not in alignment with your truth, the easier the journey will be. Because we don't go into the shadow to stay in the shadow. We go into the shadow to shine light. We go into the shadow to bring love so we can come back into wholeness.
Well said. Thank you so much for those beautiful words of wisdom, Jessica. Totally agree with you. That's beautiful. And what a beautiful conversation today. So enjoyed this time with you. And before we close today, I just want to end on the podcast with a prayer, a priestess prayer I call the gratitude prayer. And I would just invite everyone to tune in with me because I think gratitude is the highest frequency that we can embody, and it helps us to raise our consciousness and to bring light and love into the shadow, as you said. So I'll just read it out. You're welcome to say it or tune in. I am grateful for my life as a co-creator with my inner source. I acknowledge all is love and light. I accept this truth into my heart, which purifies my soul of all that is false. I accept the Holy Trinity of truth, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, our love, light, and creation, and is the whole truth of life. I surrender to this moment and embrace all parts of myself with love, respect, and gratitude, for all of life is within me. So be it, and so it is.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this has been a really beautiful conversation. Thank you, everyone who joined us live today and everyone who's on the replay, for all your love and your support. Thank you, Suzanne. A big thank you from my side. You're in for the heart. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I really appreciate you. And appreciate you, Bonnie, for being here as well. So thank you, everyone, for joining us live today and on the replay. And I invite you to check out Jessica's work, visit her website, download her free gift, this beautiful offerings that she has for you. And also, if you would like to find out more about my Get Your Goddess Groove On community, you can click on the link in the chat box. It's free to join, and you can partake of this beautiful Goddess Radio and other beautiful speakers and offerings that we have to continue to inspire you, to uplift you, and to love you into full reunion. All right. Thank you, everyone. Much love and namaste. Until we meet again, take good care.
Bye.
Bye for now.